Now in this episode we're going to continue our online game. Excuse me. And what we're doing in this episode is we're adding in the health and damage. Now I've already done this, and since this is kind of a major update, I'm just going to put a project link down in the description. But I am going to go over how I've done it. And here's an example of what we're doing right now. Okay, I set up these two windows, and you can see the character has like a little stored object, and all that is a which is a spear, not a spear, a cylinder object with a little trigger collider and a script to pull off hit detection. But over here, you can see the character has three new classes: health, damage, and attack. Now I'm gonna go over that in a second, but what's important is the health and the damage right now. Excuse me, a little bit of a cold there. But what we have is damage, and I've set it up to do 10 base damage, and then we have the health, and they have the maximum health, the current health, and I set my characters up with armor too, so we can put it in like a Grand Theft Auto style. And what they have is the maximum amount of armor and the current amount of armor. The health bar length and the arm bar length aren't important right now, but the is dead is important. And what you can see is, when I hit the mouse key, I can actually do damage to the character's armor. And currently this is working over the network. And every time I swing, I do 10 damage, and that's it. And it's important to note that this is working on using a collision system, so it is frame rate dependent. You will need a frame rate at least above 10, or I believe 15, to pull off a collision hit. And if the current armor hits 0, you can see it starts taking from the health. And let me just hurry up and kill this character. Quite a while doing 10 damage. But if the character's health goes to 0, you can see that is dead becomes true, and it lets the character know that it is dead. Now, is dead doesn't do anything right now, but later on we're going to set this up to instantiate a what do you call it, a ragdoll when the character is dead. It's going to kill this character and instantiate the ragdoll. But we're going to do that in the tutorial after next. The next tutorial we're going to set up the visuals for the health bar. Okay. Let's take a look at the scripts to see how this is working. Okay, did I set this up right? Okay, first I'm going to go over the hit detection because that's the easiest one to explain. First we have this variable called character right here, and that's just the character. And the hit detection, it actually goes on the weapon. So we just want to pull a hit off using on trigger enter. Now if you're not familiar with on trigger enter, it basically sets it up so when two colliders hit each other, if one is a trigger, you can pull off information about the other collider you're hitting. And we're just using that to pull off the hit detection. So when the sword hits the character, this is how we're telling that it hits a character. And the character transformation right here is the person holding the sword, so we can get the information like how much damage we want to do from the character script directly. And I'll go over that in a second. But basically right here, this is just to make sure the character doesn't hit its own collider. So it's saying if character.getComponent collider, which would be the character holding the weapon, we're saying if it hits his collider, if he's the person we hit, don't do anything. Else, if it's another character, then we're saying if it is another character, then if we hit this third person JS script, and we accessing the attack class, and then we're saying can damage, and this goes over the attack class, which I'll go over in a minute. But the attack class has something called can damage, and it's asking can the character do damage, and we're saying if they can, then it gets this component, this third person JS. Now this will be third person character CS if you're using the C# version of the script, which will be in this project too. But it's saying if it finds this script, because every character is going to have this script, whether they're an NPC or a player character. And we'll be adding in the NPCs in later, but every character is going to be set up to have this script. That's why it looks for it. This is It's checking for this to to tell the difference between a character and like a regular object that you hit, like a wall or something. That way you don't damage the wall, you just damage a character holding their script. And since every character is going to have their script, that's how we tell the characters from like walls and stuff. And it's saying, hey, if it does have the script, then we call it we do damage on it by accessing that script and accessing the damage class, and then calling the function that actually damages, which is called damage character. And I'll go over this in a minute, because damage character, it takes damage class as a parameter, and it takes the other dot transform as a parameter. And the reason it takes this damage class as a parameter is it's reading the amount of damage output that it wants to do. But I'll go over that when I go over the damage class. And the other dot transform is the person that we're hitting. Okay, let's go over the attack class. Now, I don't know if I went over this before, but I like to make a lot of my scripts classes instead of actual scripts that you put on the player. And the reason is because the less scripts you have updating, the better frame rate you'll get. Because say I want to put 100 or 200 players in this game, if I had 5 scripts updating on each one of those characters, it would be a lot of stuff unnecessarily updating. But if you had only 1 script updating per character, it'd be a lot better on processor, because it would process a lot less information, and it would just go through one update loop instead of going through an update loop 5 times. And working with Unity for a while, I found that's the best way to do it. Also, things like here, where I want to pass a whole class to a function, it's just a lot easier and a lot simpler to pass a whole class to a function than to look up every one of these small variables that we might need or something like that. And also, later on, we're going to be saving the game to a file, so you have a save like a regular game. And when you're doing stuff like that, you see how we have this health class with a lot of variables. If you were saving it to a file, you would have to write out each one of these variables to be saved individually. But if it's all in a class, then you could just say save the class instead of saying save each one of these variables, which is a lot simpler. So that's why you'll see a lot of my scripts are actually classes instead of actual scripts that go on the player. And all the classes are going to be accessed in this character class, which is going to go on every single character. That way we can just put this one script on them, and they already have health, damage, and attack, and everything they need to become a character. But going over that, this is the attack class. It has this can attack boolean. Now this is not too important now. This is basically just using making sure that we can't attack while we're already attacking, so we can do like infinite damage or something. Or it just prevents a lot of errors right now. But later on, we're also going to be using it so that we can't attack when we get hit. Sorry, I got a little bit of cold. And next is the can damage variable. Now this is used so we can control when the character does damage and when they don't do damage. This is used so when the character is swinging the weapon across, it doesn't hit the object multiple times. So each time you attack, you only do 10 damage. You'll never attack and then do 10 damage and then hit the character again and do 10 damage, and then again and again and again. That stops things like that from happening. Now we have this function called light attack. In my game, I'm going to have a light attack and a heavy attack. And the heavy attack is going to charge up and attack. So the light attack is going to be light fast attack. Right now I just added in a light attack because this is the beginning. And right now we have the variable can damage is equaling true and can attack is equaling false. Now if I'm not explaining this well enough, I have commented this out so you can know exactly what it does. And then we have end attack. End attack is letting us know that we want to stop doing damage and we want to stop attacking, and that we can attack again if we end this attack. And it's just setting it's going to set all the attack animations to false. That's why it takes the animator as a parameter. But for right now, since we're only doing a light attack, it's only going to set the light attack parameter and the animator to false. Next we have our health class, and our health class is going to be a class that deals with our health and damaging the character and everything like that. And we have these variables: max health and current health, the maximum amount of health the character has, and the current amount of health the character has. Then we have the maximum amount of armor the character has, and the current amount of armor the character has. We also have these two variables right here: health bar length and armor bar length. That's not too important right now. It'll be important in the next tutorial after this, when we do the visuals for the health bar. But right now it's not too important. And then we have this is dead variable. And this is just used to tell if the character is dead or alive. So when the character dies, we want to instantiate a rigid body. I mean a ragdoll. That way it'll look like the character died with actual physics, without actually calling on the physics system the whole time. And next we have this function called damage calculation. This is the actual function that damages the character, and it takes this variable base damage. Later on we're going to be adding in different types of damages and resistances, and that'll make this a lot more complicated. But I just wanted to show off the base system of how it's going to work, because later on it's going to add in like flame damage, and then flame resistance and ice resistance and all that stuff. But right now we excuse me, it's just taking in a basic parameter, which is the base amount of damage we want to do. And it just says if the current health is greater than 0, then take this damage out of the current health. But if it's not, which is the else statement, which is it'll be 0 or below 0. Actually it'll just be 0 because of this down here, but I'll get to that in a minute. It just says if it is 0, then take it from the take the damage from the health. And that's how we're achieving that. The damage damage in the armor first, and then damage in the health second. Next we have this this right here, which just stops errors. It's just saying, hey, if the current health is if the current armor or the current health is below 0, then just take the armor and the health down to 0. Take the health and the armor to 0. I'll probably have to edit that in a minute, now that I think about it, because we don't want the current health going to 0 if the armor is less than 0. So I'll actually separate this now. Just yeah, I was trying to be a little lazy right there, but I didn't really think about it. It's good I actually caught that mistake, because that would have gave us an error later on. And it's always good to notice things like this when you're actually coding, which is why I like to go back over my code and make sure, because I would have been looking for this error for a long time and wouldn't have really thought about it. Let's just change that now. Just a little more there. And boom, it's fixed. Okay, now that just makes sure the current health doesn't go below 0, and it makes sure that the current armor doesn't go below 0. And right here we have the calculations for the health bar length. It just keeps the health bar length between 0 and 1, so to make it a lot more easier to calculate, and that's not too important later on. It also does it for the armor bar right here. It's not too important right now, but it's going to be important later on in the next tutorial. So I just went ahead and put that in right now. And then we have this final part right here, which says if current health is equals 0, then the character is dead. And that's how we tell if the character is dead or not. Next we have this damage class right here, and this is going to be the function controlling all the amount of damage we do. Now right now we're just doing base damage, but later on we're going to add things like flame damage and ice damage and stuff like that. And this is the actual function that calls the function damage the character. This works with hit detection. You see, the hit detection accesses the damage class. Now when you hit an enemy, what happens is the enemy it detects the enemy collider, and then it calls this function. If they have a character script and you are able to do attack, it accesses this damage function, and then it calls that damage character function, which is right here. And the damage character function, it takes the damage class as a parameter, and I believe it's going to be always taken in your damage class. Yeah, so it's going to be taken in your damage class, ideally. And then it's going to be taking a victim, which is the transform. A victim's transform, and that's the person we hit. And since we have access to the collider, we just put other.transform with other representing their collider. And right here, it just it accesses the victim, and then it says get component third person JS, which is right here holding all our classes. It gets access to their health class, and then it calls the damage calculation, and it inputs your base damage as the amount of damage you want to do. And that's when that damage calculation is that function right here in the health class, and that's how we damage the character. Next we have our third person user controls, and right here all we have in here is what we added new. I've actually accommodated out just in case I didn't explain it well enough, and I'll be putting C# versions of all these scripts up too, so you won't have to worry about that if you want to do this project in C#. You can actually just download the link that's going to be down in the description, and it will have two folders. With one will say JavaScript and one will say C#. If you want to use C#, you would just go to C# and get the character prefab from the C# prefab. Okay, we just set the we just accessed the animator that's in our character class, which is our animator, and then we set the bool light attack to true if we press key code mouse 1. Now if you watched my previous video, the reason I put key code mouse 1 instead of actually using get button is because later on I plan on adding button remapping to this. So that's how we set the attack to true. We just say, hey, do the animation, and we're calling it the attack. Where's it? In the attack class, we're calling these two functions from the animation, but I'll explain how that's a bit complicated in a minute when I get to this script right here. Now this script right here is the character script, which is going to be on every single character, which I said before, and it just has these three. I just added these three classes, which is the health class, the damage class, and the attack class. I've also made the animator public so we can access it from this right here and set the animations to true or false. But more importantly, what we have right here is these two functions. The light attack is calling the attack class, and the light attack function, which I went over when I went over in the attack class, and it's calling the end attack, and the attack class. It's calling the attack class, and then it's accessing the end function, end attack function, and it's passing in the animator as the parameter. And you might ask, why did I do it this way? Well, it's important because we're calling this from the animation event system, and using the animation event system, you can only use functions that don't pass through parameters. At least that's been my experience. I haven't figured out another way to do it. So I access all these functions here so I can call them in the animation events class like that without parameters, as you can see. And I believe that's it for scripting. Let's go over the setup. I'm just gonna go to the prefabs, and you can see if you want to use a C# version of this, all you have to do is go to the C# and get this player prefab and drag it into the scene, or drag it into the setup. Actually, you would need to drag it into here if you want to use the C# version, but I'm just going to go with the JavaScript version as an example right now. Now he's holding this little object called test weapon, and we'll just give that, well, test sword, and the test sword has the script hit detection. Now all this is a cylinder with a capsule collider, which is set to trigger, and this hit detection script on it. And now right now you're gonna have to drag the, well, you're not gonna have to do it, but I'm just explaining how I did it because you'll be able to download the project link. I dragged this player the actual player into the character right here, which is going to need to work. Now later on we're going to be changing that up, because later on we're going to be instantiating the weapons from code, because we're going to want them to use different types of weapons. So we're going to be instantiating all the weapons from code, and we're going to be doing all this through code. Also later on we're going to be changing the setup, because right now I just directly put the sword into his hand and parroted it to his hand, as you can see. But later on we're actually going to have an object, and we're going to be instantiating this weapon, since we're going to be switching weapons. But just to get it out and add the damage to it, I just simply put the weapon in his hand for right now. But no, later on we are going to be changing this setup, where we actually put a game object right here in his hand, and we're simply going to be instantiating the weapon to the game object, which will be the weapon point. But that's all the setup that required. I just put this little sword in his hand and put the hit detection script on it, and then I set this little collider to its trigger, and that's it. And over here in the third person character script, I've just set the max health and the current armor and the current max armor all to 100, and I set the base damage to 10. And you don't have to mess with these at all. Later on we'll probably make them private, but right now I just left them public. Now let's go over how we're calling the attacking and end attack in animation. I've downloaded the skeleton data pack for two reasons. One, we're going to use this as our basic enemy. Now later on we're going to be turning these into NPCs, and these are going to be the things attacking us. These are going to be the base level enemies. But more important right now, it has this nice attack animation. Now in this attack animation, I've set the root transform rotation. I've clicked that right there, so the character doesn't have any unnecessary rotations. Because when you're doing attacks like this, you want it to be as clear as possible. You don't want your character rotating to the side, because you actually have to hit the character to do damage. So if you couldn't hit the character, like if he accidentally rotated to the side or something stupid like that, the animation would miss the character, and therefore you would miss the hit. I've also clicked this right here. Now if you don't click this right here, the character could stand in midair and attack and he wouldn't fall, and that would be unrealistic. If the character is attacking in midair, you want him to be falling, because gravity would be acting on the character. So that's why I clicked that right there. And this stops the character from moving unnecessarily, either to the right or front and back. I mean left to right or front and back. And it just stops you from, again, doing stupid stuff while he's attacking. More importantly, I've set up the event system to call the attack. Now as you can see, I've set up it to have two events right here, which I went over before, which are being called from this script right here: light attack and end attack. The first one is light attack. It's being called right before the character attacks. This ensures that it's absolutely in sync with the animation. This is why I really like to use the animation system, because you can see right before he attacks, he starts, and right here he can't do any damage. Even if he were to hit you right here, he wouldn't be able to do any damage, which is realistic. He can't do damage until he actually hits this point where he actually starts to swing, and right here in the animation he stops being able to do damage. So even if he hits you at this point, he won't be able to do damage anymore. And you can see that creates a much more realistic gameplay right here, where he can only damage you while he is swinging right there, and at that point he calls end attack. And that's how I'm going to be setting up a lot of my attacks with the animation system like that. That way it's really in sync, and you have a much more professional looking damage system, where the character, where the person doesn't feel like they got cheap shotted or something like that. And I believe that is it. Let me just make sure I didn't add anything else. Don't believe I did. That's it. Now again, if I'm not explaining some of this correctly, you can download the project from the project link and just do it directly. And you can also go through the scripts, and they're all commented out very deeply so you can understand exactly what everything does. And also, I recommend that you download the skeleton pack. I'm going to leave it in the project link, even though I really don't like to do that because people want you to download it from the asset store. But I'm going to leave it in there because some important parts work on there. But I'm also going to put the download link to the skeleton pack in the description. But that's about it for today. Thank you for watching. And the next video, we're going to be doing the visuals for the health bar and the enemy health bar. We're going to put the enemy health bar right here, and we're going to put our health bar right here and our armor bar right here in a sort of Grand Theft Auto style. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to suggest a tutorial, please suggest a tutorial in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.